Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
Don't you understand, George? It's because you were not born.
Film church.
Well, a boy's best friend is his mother.
We still have time. We just gotta hold on to it, even if it gets messy and hard. Take the good and the bad, for better or worse.
Hello and welcome to Film Church Radio, the podcast that treats cinema as a religion. It's Sunday and I'm Brandon.
And I'm Lewis.
And we are here to talk about movies. Each week, Lewis and I alternate picking a film for both of us to watch and discuss. Today, I picked the film from 2020, Wander Darkly, directed by Tara Mealy and starring Sienna Miller and Diego Luna. What's up, Lewis?
Not much, dude. How are you?
I'm good, dude. It's been a good week.
Good. It's always weird how we have a conversation before we start, and then as soon as we start recording, we have to pretend like we've only just walked into the same room.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so strange.
It is weird, but for the fans, you know,
Yeah,
they
exactly.
enjoy it. They must enjoy it.
This
We
is
don't know.
This is the first interaction they've had with us all day. So
Yeah, exactly. But if you guys are enjoying the show, you should definitely let us know, because we love hearing from you. A few people have reached out to us, and we really appreciate it. You can hit us up on the social medias at Film Church Radio is our social account name. And yeah, we're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Leave us a comment. Tell us what you think of the show, what you like, what you hate. Just let us know everything. We want to know it all.
yeah, what movies you want us to watch and discuss in
Yeah.
the future, all that kind
Exactly.
of good stuff.
So before we get into this movie, we're gonna do our quick reviews, which is just, you know, basically what we've been watching this week. I haven't been watching a ton lately, but I did watch a couple of movies this week. It's getting harder and harder for me. I'm trying to get in a good movie watching routine. I said that at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
And I'm slowly getting there. But I watched The Power of the Dog
Nice.
on Netflix. I
Good.
almost went and saw it in theaters, and then I was like, or I could just hit play on Netflix.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah,
I feel
it's-
bad about, because we're all about, you know, the cinema experience here at Film Church. But
It's tempting.
yeah, so I gave in to the temptation, and I watched it on Netflix, and I enjoyed it. It was after watching it, I was like, I should have watched that in a theater. It's a very without giving any spoilers, it's a movie that's not. It's kind of a slow burn, I guess, and it's
Yeah.
a very thoughtful kind of movie with a lot of nuances where you're just the thing that you have to enjoy about this movie is watching the nuances in these characters and these performances, because so much is unsaid
Yeah.
that you have to be paying attention to all these little things that, you know, you're kind of putting pieces together in your mind. And at the end, they don't really confirm anything for you. You have to
Yeah.
kind of just decide for yourself, you know, what you just watched. But yeah, I had this feeling after watching that I was like, this would probably be really enjoyable on some kind of substance.
Yeah, it's one of those films that I think ironically demands your undivided attention, which is really hard when it's on Netflix and streaming at home.
Yeah, exactly.
And I totally agree. You know, I watched it on Netflix as well, and I wish I'd seen it in the cinema just so that, like, I could be in it completely and not be distracted by anything. But yeah, dude, it's a crazy film, and one that I've like not really stopped thinking about. And I want to go back and watch it, ideally in the cinema, but I know it's, you know, hitting the end of its theatrical run.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but it's good.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. And then the other movie I watched this week was The United States versus Billie Holiday, which
Nice.
I enjoyed a lot. Of course, I don't know that much about Billie Holiday,
Yeah.
you know, or didn't know that much going into it. So, you know, I just enjoyed it as, you know, for the film it was. The acting was really good and the story was really good. So, yeah, I liked it a lot.
That's awesome. Yeah. I've had even like sparser week than you have, Brandon.
Yeah.
I only got a chance to watch one other than the film that we're going to be discussing. we mentioned before, I changed jobs, so it's more 9 to 5 Monday to Friday, which is great. But it also means that there's more time for me and my wife to watch TV together. So a lot of our time is spent catching up on shows and watching things that we both like. But we did manage to watch Singing in the Rain, which I hadn't seen for must be about 3-4 years at this point.
Wow.
And my wife is a huge fan of Gene Kelly, so whenever I want to watch a classic, I'm like, we should watch some Gene Kelly.
Yeah.
But I watched Singing in the Rain, and it's just so joyful and fun and like just
it's always a good one to go to. Like I had actually only seen it for the first time probably like 4 years ago or so.
Yeah.
Maybe a little more than that, but it was a movie that my girlfriend grew up watching.
Yeah.
And was, finally like, you have to watch this, and now we've watched it at least 2 or 3 times.
Yeah. The lampooning of the film industry is just spot on. It's just so great. Like every note's perfect, and Gene Kelly is just like, I was thinking about it the other day. He's the most perfect example of like talent. Like actors are really good because they can act, but not only can he act, he can sing, he can dance, he can direct. Like he's just like the complete entertainer. And anytime he's on the screen, I'm just enthralled. I just love watching him. He could sit and read the dictionary and I'd buy it and watch it. I just think he's wonderful, or he was wonderful.
I want to see him sing the dictionary now.
Yeah. You might have a problem.
So this movie that we're talking about today, Wander Darkly, which is on Hulu. If you haven't seen it, please go see it before you listen to us talk about this movie, because it is worth watching.
Yes,
people.
I'm glad you said that. I went into this film, not before you mentioned it, not really of I've heard about it before. So I tried my best not to look at anything before I went into it, and it paid off so well. It's one of those films that I think the less you know about it when you watch it, the bigger the impact.
Yeah, definitely.
So, like we've said before, if you don't want it spoiled, stop this podcast, go and find it, watch that film. It's an hour and a half. It's not going to take too long.
Exactly, yeah.
And then you can come straight back and hear us talk about it. Wax lyrical.
So, going to give you a few more seconds to go pause this, pull up that Hulu app, watch this movie, or rent it. It's $4 digital. Like, do it, people. Come on, support these guys.
Yeah. Well, we can do the summary, like the basic IMDb summary, and then talk about who's in it, who directed it, who wrote it. Give enough people enough time.
So, the IMDb summary is: new parents Adrian and Mateo are forced to reckon with a trauma amidst their troubled relationship. They must revisit the memories of their past and unravel haunting truths in order to face their uncertain future. So this is directed by Tara Mealy, stars Sienna Miller, Diego Luna, and this movie is so good. It's an incredible watch. I had no idea what I was getting into. I knew that there was a car accident involved, and I had the opportunity to volunteer at Sundance 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So right before the pandemic hit, it's they haven't done an in-person festival since then. Sundance is actually, they're doing the award ceremony for 2022 tonight.
Oh, awesome.
So that'll be interesting to see. But anyways, so I went to Sundance in 2020, and it was through my school. So I was a volunteer, but it was through my university. And because I was a student, I got a package with the volunteer thing called the Ignite events. So basically they just had different events set up for up and coming filmmakers and students to come and talk to other filmmakers and listen to people speak and, things like that. So one of the events that they were having was basically this thing where all of these students go in this room, like a big room, and they break off into groups, and then all these filmmakers come in, and if a different filmmaker sits with each group, and we can sit and like talk to them, ask them questions about their film or just about, you know, how to get your project off the ground, things like that. And then, you know, we would get like, I forget how long it was, like 10 or 15 minutes with the filmmaker, and then they would rotate. So we got to talk to every filmmaker that came in.
That's awesome.
And Tara Mealy was one of the filmmakers that we got to talk to, and I had no idea who she was. And I had no idea anything about her movie. Like, and now in like hindsight, like after watching this movie, I'm just like, oh my God, what did I even say? What did I even ask her? I'm like thinking back, like all these things that I wish I could have asked her and stuff. But I did ask her a question about, because I knew one of the things that they had talked about when they introduced her was that this was her second time to have a film in Sundance, and her first time was like 10 years prior. And she was, at the time, she was then in her 40s. And at the time I was 29, like about to turn 30. And when I was around 17 or so, I had like told myself, I'm going to make a feature by the time I'm 30.
Yeah.
So I'm at Sundance, turning 30 in a couple of months. I haven't made a feature, and you know, I had been down on myself for a while, but Sundance was like a huge opportunity, you know, something that I didn't expect to do anytime soon, you know. So I just asked her the question, like, what was it like making your first film, you know, getting it off the ground and doing it, you know, in your 30s, and then not doing another feature for 10 years, which I don't think was actually the case. She's been working, she's been doing like TV, and I think she's done other features, just not, you know, once I got into Sundance. But, you know, and I'm paraphrasing here because I can't remember exactly what she said. I wish I could now, but, you know, she just basically was like, you know, age is just a number. Like you can't put all that pressure on yourself to have something done by a certain age. You just have to live your life, and, you know, things will take off when they take off. A lot of filmmakers' careers don't really take off until later in life, you know?
Yeah.
And that just kind of opened my eyes a lot to the perspective I was having on myself and my career, and like the possibilities, like realizing, oh, like even though, you know, I had this expectation that I put on myself of what I was going to do by the time I reached 30, like there's still so much ahead of me, you know, so much opportunity, so much like who knows what the future holds, you know?
Exactly.
Just have to keep trying, not give up, and, you know, keep putting in the work.
That's awesome. That's so cool.
And then after that, you know, I kept thinking about what she said a lot, and even months after that, I was like, I need to look her up and look at her films and stuff.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until a while later I was like, I couldn't remember her name. I couldn't remember what the film was called that she directed, but I knew that there was a car accident involved. So I just started trying to figure out who this person was that I had talked to.
Yeah.
And then finally found her on IMDb and found the film that she had at Sundance, and then put it on my list. And then it's been on my list for a long time. I mean, it's been 2 years since I went to Sundance, but yeah. So I've been waiting a while to watch this, and then I went into it not really knowing anything about it, and man, it is such a good movie. I mean, it is an emotional roller coaster that you know, I wasn't prepared for.
Yeah, me neither.
And the storytelling is so good. Like it's such an original thing. It's like it was, as I was watching it the first time, it was opening my eyes to the possibilities of ways you can tell a story, and new ways you can tell a story, because I haven't really seen a story told like this before.
Yeah. No, agreed. It was very different to anything that I'd seen before. I mean, I felt that I went into this blind, I didn't really know anything apart from the IMDb summary that I'd looked up. And I felt like a lot of things I projected onto this film, personally, about like kind of the last few years that I've been going through. Not that it's been anything like this. But not to get into too much detail, when my daughter was born, I started having panic attacks due to the fact that I had to stay alive to look after my daughter. You know, I had to be there to watch her grow up and stuff like that. So this film hit me like a train. Especially the last 15, 20 minutes. I mean, I sent you a photo of when it had finished. Because I was like full, like sobbing at the end of it.
Full Kevin Smith.
Yeah, I pulled a Kevin Smith. Yeah. For me to cry at a film, especially in that way, it takes something special. And that's not saying that, you know, I don't react to things, but I am English. So all my emotions are pretty well hidden. You know, it takes a lot to make me laugh when I'm watching a film. It takes a lot to make me cry when watching a film. So the fact that this film made me sob, I was like, there's something special in this film. There's something that it's tapped into, and I couldn't tell if it was just because it was such a personal experience for me. So that's why I was excited to talking to you about it, because like I felt like it was like holding a mirror to me, you know, which was very odd and like a very uncomfortable situation at first. Yeah.
I mean, it deals with you know, the after, or how to deal with trauma, like how to deal with a traumatic experience, and also, like you said, I mean, you're, you know, since having a kid, your perspective on life and death changes. So you're realizing that, you know, life is fragile. And you know, she apparently, her and her Tara Mealy, which she wrote and directed this film, her and her husband were in a car accident, and basically she based a lot of the film off of some of her experiences. They, granted, you know, she said like they weren't as dramatic as they're portrayed in the movie, but basically she just started she's kind of said the same thing you're saying, is that her view of life and death changed. She realized how fragile her life was, and how much that could affect her kids, you know, if she was to pass. So this movie, I mean, it starts off, I mean, it's a romantic film. All right. It's like, it's kind of like a psychological romance, but I would also call it like a time travel romance. You know, and there's a few time travel romance movies, like that's a genre that I've like seen before, but you know, this isn't it's not exactly time travel, but you know, it's more of just about like memories and stuff. But it starts off and you get introduced to this couple, and they're just having like an argument in the beginning, and you know, it's just kind of like a normal drama. But to go from like where it started, to go from this couple where you're like, oh, this relationship is over. To this place by the end where you love them together. You know, you love seeing them together, and you want them to keep it together. It was such a crazy journey to go on, because I mean, just from the start of that, you know, like if you watch the first 5 minutes of this movie, you could not imagine how it could get to that point where you would want these two people to be together. You know what I'm saying? Man, it's I thought it would be easier to describe this movie, but it's a little difficult.
The thing that came to mind, especially about that opening, was that relationship already felt lived in. It felt like these two characters, and I found out later that Sienna Miller and Diego Luna had been friends for a long time, which makes a lot of sense. But this relationship feels so real. It's like, you know, and the casting is spot on. I think Sienna Miller, from that opening where she's trying to decide what to wear, you can tell what kind of person she is. Same with Diego Luna, like that he was cast for a reason. And when you see him kind of, in his workshop in that opening scene, and he's very, I didn't know we were going out tonight. I was like, okay, he's the like happy-go-lucky. He'll just, he's kind of just going with the flow, and she's the kind of not uptight. I don't want to say it like that, but she's the more rigid, kind of expecting a more traditional lifestyle, I guess. Yeah, and that's kind of how it played out. And the fact that in such a short amount of time, that relationship felt real and those characters felt believable was incredible.
Yeah, right off the bat, there was no, like, I just felt so in the film as soon as it started. Yeah. There was no, like, there was nothing off about it. You know what I mean? And then when they have an accident, and then it starts going into her questioning whether or not she's alive or not. And then the real plot of the movie gets going when Diego Luna is trying to, she thinks she's dead, and he's talking to her, and he's trying to convince her that she's alive. Yeah. So he starts talking about their relationship. I think the first memory that he goes back to is when their child was born, which in the movie, their child is about 6 months old throughout the story. So he tells her the story of when their child was born, because she's even questioning whether or not they even had a kid. Yeah. And he starts going through this memory, and the scene cuts to the memory, like you would normally see in a movie where, it's like a flashback scene. Yeah. But instead of doing like a normal flashback, in the scene, they're having dialogue that's in the present. Yeah. So that's kind of the like time travel thing that I was talking about. It's not obviously time travel. He's talking about a memory, but the scene, it was such a beautiful like way to do it, that I haven't really seen before, where they're having dialogue that's from the memory, but it's also in the present, but they're still in the scene from the past.
Yeah, it's that whole thing of, I think I've seen it before where the characters are reacting a memory or reenacting a memory, and they'll pause while the voiceover will argue, it didn't happen like that, it happened like this. Yeah. But for this, it's the characters would be like mid-conversation how it happened, and then one of them would be like, but this isn't how it happened, you left me at this point. Mm-hmm. And like break back into like, I guess, future.
The present.
Yeah, the present, yeah. And it was one of those where at first it felt a little jarring. I was like, wait, like what like, is this the after? Like, what is happening? Yeah. But as soon as you like, I don't know, relax into it, I'm like, this story could not have been told any better than that. Yeah. It's such an ingenious way to get these characters to reflect on the past, but also talk about how memories work, what emotions can do to memories, like his was very kind of rose tinted. It was like, this was perfect. This was our life. And hers were a little bit more like, I mean, as you find out later, I assume it was to kind of protect her from the grief that she was feeling. She was trying to like push him away with these memories by saying he wasn't as great. He wasn't, I wasn't as in love with him as I think. Yeah. But yeah, it was done so well.
Yeah, and memories can be like that too, where you remember, like especially if you're talking about your relationship with your partner, and you're reflecting on, falling in love and like the experiences that you've had together. A lot of times it's the time and place that you can remember. Like you can remember the scene and the setting and all of this stuff, but you can't remember exactly like
the words,
what was said, the words. Yeah. You can't remember exactly who said what. And it was cool because, a lot of these scenes where they're flashing back, they're in that time and place, but then they're having dialogue in the present. Mm-hmm. And it's just a little bit of dialogue from what they can remember of the past. Yeah. I just found it so, I don't know what the right word is, just so intriguing, and gripping the whole time. I mean, the whole time, a lot of times when those scenes were going on, I kept thinking, this is so much to keep track of. I mean, it plays out well when you're watching it as a viewer, and it's not hard to digest as a viewer. But I can only imagine what it was like on set, you know, keeping track of all of the dialogue of what's, you know, what dialogue is being said from the present and the past, and trying to keep track of what, you know, where the narrative is.
Yeah.
So like kudos to the actors and the
I'm
director
sure.
for getting all that together, and the editors and everything. Had to have been very complicated.
Yeah, and then towards the end, it even goes into the future. So it's not. Well, I mean, you find out that it's not the future, but it even goes into like, this is what's going to happen, and they kind of talk about it again like it's happening, but also as if it's a pipe dream. It's very odd for this to work. Do you know what I mean? It's not. Yeah. Like it could have so easily have not worked.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Is like, it could have just. Yeah, there could have been anything that could have just made this film fall apart, but it's so well done.
Yeah.
I mean, it sticks to the landing like perfectly.
Yeah.
And I just can't believe, like, after watching this, like, not hearing anything else about it. You know, I mean, it did get nominated at Sundance for the Grand Jury Prize in 2020, but it didn't win. And then it released in December of 2020. So, I mean, COVID was still going on. I mean, people were trying to get theaters back open. So, I can only imagine, like, I wonder what this film would have done if COVID hadn't happened. But, like, just to not see it do anything, you know, as far as, I mean, not even the Oscars are, you know, the end all be all or anything, but just literally that that nobody, like, this seems like almost like a hidden gem, you know what I mean? Which seems crazy to me because it's just so damn good.
Yeah.
You know?
I think there's like just a few areas that could have been developed a little bit more personally for me. I felt like all the secondary characters were very one-dimensional. Yeah. And this is very slight minor things. I don't think that if they had any more, if those characters had been fleshed out anymore, it would have added to my enjoyment of the film. And David Lowery's released a Ghost Story a few years before, and the similarities are there. And I wonder that if a Ghost Story hadn't have come out or had come out after, if this would have been more widely seen and maybe appreciated more. Yeah. You know, because it's those similar kind of themes of like, you know, within the first 20 minutes, I wrote in my notes, like, what is worse than death is that knowing you've died and being able to see people react to it. You know, there's a lot of talk about, especially couples that are in love. I don't know if you've seen the Ricky Gervais show Afterlife on Netflix.
I haven't watched it, no.
Okay. This deals with like loss and everything. And his character says like, I really wish I was the one that had died first so I don't have to go through the grief. Yeah. And that's, you know, and that's the whole point. Like if you die first, like then a loved one, you don't have to deal with the grief, right? Yeah. But if you have to die, know you've died, and then watch other people react, that must just be the worst thing imaginable. And that's a similar kind of theme to a Ghost Story. So I do wonder if that did hinder this release at all.
I mean, maybe. I've seen Ghost Story, and, you know, not to downplay it or anything. It's a great film. I mean, the performances are great. It's very well made. But like this is to me, yes, maybe similar themes, but like as a film viewing experience, it's totally different. You know what I mean? I mean, like, I don't know. And not that the technical parts of a film, like because a film is more difficult technically, that it makes it better or anything. But this film definitely was more difficult technically than a Ghost. I mean, Ghost Story is very simple as far as like, I mean, it's a lot of just like the camera doesn't move a ton. Yeah. You know, it's a lot of just like letting the scenes play out and stuff like that. Whereas this, like the way that like everything was meticulously planned as far as the transitions between the memories of the scenes and how, you know, like somebody knocks on the door, he opens the door, and then they hear the ocean and like the water starts coming in and it like transitions to the beach. When they're walking down the street and he looks up and sees the light flicker, and then all of a sudden it's all the lamp posts in this museum, and they're having this memory of being in this museum. Like things like that, you know, it wasn't necessarily showy about it. Like it wasn't like I was noticing them, but it wasn't like, oh, look how cool this is. Like it fit all the scenes perfectly. Like it was benefiting the story. It was contributing to the storytelling. You know, it wasn't just being there to be like, look at this cool transition. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think the scene, or the scenes that remind me of how well this was done, was when Sienna Miller's character Thirst thinks that she's dead, and she sees, like, she wakes up in bed and she goes running through the house, and then she's suddenly outside in front of the church, and it's her funeral, and then she chases Diego Luna's character Mateo into the back, and then she's running down the corridor. It then changes to, I think, the hospital, right? Yeah. Or it's like her mother's house, and then she sees her daughter, and it's just like, it's so well constructed as a film that at no point was I like, that doesn't quite work.
It feels kind of like a dream, especially in that scene, because it's so well. Because like when I assume that people have dreams like I do, where like you're in a, you can be in a scene and then you have a thought of something, and all of a sudden the room changes to somewhere completely different without you really noticing, if that makes sense. Well, I read, like you just know you're in a different environment.
Yeah, I heard something years ago, and I think it was Mark Kermode, the British film critic, that said it, that films are dreams. Films are like dreams, because there's no, like, dreams you just cut to the next thing. It's not, it's not it's not like life. It's the boring bits are cut out, right? Yeah. So cinema is like a dream as it is. You're watching a dream projected. And this film, I think, did really well with blurring those lines. I mean, because straight away I was like, okay, she's dead, right? And this film is going to be about her seeing her family and friends grow up without her and having to deal with it. And then it changes, and I'm like, is she dead? And then I was like, okay, she's dead. And then I was like, is she dead? And then, okay, she's dead. There was a lot of like blurring those lines between, just as I thought, okay, this is, this seems very real. It would be like, she'd be in the woodworking shop, and then the water would start to lap in. I'd be like, okay, that's a sign that, she's in purgatory or whatever. Or she'd get hit by that car, So I think it did such a good job at blurring those lines, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I couldn't believe that this movie was only an hour and a half long. Yeah. Like, I know when we watched Badlands, I was like, this movie felt so much longer. And this movie also felt longer, but in a good way. Yeah. Because I think it's just because you feel like you experience like an entire lifetime in this film in an hour and a half. And for a movie to be able to do that and you not really notice, I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, and I just love the fact that these characters were given a chance to kind of, like you said at the beginning, you see them in probably the worst place of their relationship. And just as a heads up, the first year after having a baby is incredibly taxing and hard on a relationship. Not saying that
Spoilers.
not saying that me and my wife ever got to this point, because we definitely didn't, but lack of sleep and who's going to look after the baby and like this new responsibility, your whole life changes. So it does take a toll on a relationship. But the fact that we got to then see how they fell in love and kind of how this had progressed to this point really benefited the story. I was like, like you said, by the end, you're like, oh my God, please stay together. Like, please, make this work. It's not a perfect relationship, but whose is? This isn't, like we've said before, I think Zach mentioned it last week, 1940s Hollywood. It's not like a 2-day, we fell in love, our life is going to be happily ever after. This is a real lived-in relationship. And you have to work at it, and you're going to have ups and downs. And it portrayed that so well.
Yeah. So, getting into the ending.
Oh God, okay.
it goes somewhere you really don't expect it to go, because there's a point in the movie where she's thinking about jumping off the roof, and she already thinks she's dead anyway, right? And he shares a few more memories with her and convinces her to get down, and then they're holding each other, and he says, "Remember when we were married?" Or remember when we got married. And this whole time in the film, they've established that they're not married. There was a chance that there was a time where he almost proposed and he didn't. They already have a baby and a house together. They've just never been married. So it's kind of like this long drawn out thing that she's always wanted, and he's just never done it. And so when he says, "Do you remember when we got married?" It's kind of like him saying, "Will you marry me?"
Yeah.
And then they go into like their wedding, but it's also kind of like the way they do it is kind of the way they've been doing the memories, where they're kind of, you're not sure if it's really happening or if it's a memory,
Yeah.
And then you get to this point where it's going to be hard for me to describe this to people who are listening that haven't watched the movie, so I'm not even going to attempt. Hopefully you've watched the movie. But the reveal where, like it was just, all I can say, like the best way I can describe it is just that it was done so well. Like all the Grim Reaper stuff, that seems a little, like sometimes that kind of stuff in movies is just there to be there.
Yeah.
To be like, ooh, scary. But the fact that they were able to she tied it into the story so well that it was, there was actually this homeless man in a hood that was banging on the window. Like it all had to do, like all the things that she was freaking out about, the clock, seeing the clock, like all of that stuff just tied back in to her traumatic experience, which is what's playing out in this entire movie. And when that realization comes, and then she realizes that he's gone, I mean, it is so devastating as a viewer.
Yeah.
And you start, connecting all the dots, and man, I just found myself, there's a scene in the beginning when she thinks he's dead, and you think that you're at her funeral, and Diego Luna is up at the front trying to give a speech, and he says like, "This feels so unreal. I wish I could just dip my hands into the sand of the hourglass and change it."
Yeah.
And like that's exactly what I felt at the end of this movie. I was like, nah, just let them be together. Like, let this not be real,
Yeah.
Man, it was intense.
Yeah. So leading on from that, so Diego Luna's character Mateo is the one that actually dies in the car crash, not Sienna Miller. So her whole time, like Brandon said, is her dealing with the grief of losing her husband, and kind of him like walking her towards acceptance, I guess, and like acknowledgement of what's happened. That scene did two things for me. The first was that we see his like dying breath, which I was like, oh God, okay, here we go. Because it's not just like we cut to him and he's kind of like, the sheet's being pulled over, he's being wheeled away in an ambulance. He is like stuck on his steering wheel, taking his last breath.
Yeah. And
then cut to her kind of freaking out at the homeless guy. And then when it like the realization hits and she's like, I can't breathe. Like that, I was like, oh my God, here we go. This is a lot to kind of like process right now. And that wasn't the one that hit me. The thing that hit me was something that I don't think Terra Mille had to do, but I'm really glad that she did, was she showed a few scenes of the aftermath of like the daughter growing up and them like living their life together. Those two scenes were the ones that really affected me. Yeah. Especially when they got on the boat and she's like, oh my God, that was the point that I was like, it destroyed me. Like these two people living now with the memory of this, with a father and a husband might as well have been. I know that they weren't married, but and kind of living, like carrying on. Like I always find the aftermath of grief a lot more interesting than grief itself. You know, how people kind of pick themselves up and kind of carry on moving.
Yeah.
And not a lot of films stick around for that. You know, we see the grief and then we see 6 months later, I'm fine. You know, whereas this was like they are still obviously dealing with it years later.
Yeah.
And that really affected me.
Yeah.
But there was so many points in this where I was just like, I'm so glad you did that. I'm so glad this story went this direction, you know. Because there was a point in the middle where I was like, where are we going? You know, what is, like, if they're both alive and this is kind of just for them to get married, I'll be like, meh, you know, okay.
Yeah.
But I think it needed that emotional payoff at the end. And as I said before, I've stopped trying to outguess films. And even though I did have a inkling as we got towards that scene, especially when she woke up to go to the hospital and he wasn't there, he just kind of disappeared overnight. That was like, okay, he might be dead, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it still hits.
Yeah, I mean, I rewatched it again this morning, and it was very interesting to watch again because, you know, obviously knowing the twist of the end and rewatching it is a different experience. But it's, oh man, like everything, it's just perfect. Like it's just so, it was so well crafted. Like I can't get over how, because it's such a complicated thing to pull off. It feels like, and the fact that they pulled it off so well is just incredible to me. Sienna Miller's acting.
Wow. Yeah.
I can't like overstate how good it is because she's able to show like such tragic emotions, but then also like in the memory scenes show like this playful happiness, you know, this other personality that she has, like her ability to switch from the different emotions of these characters and the different things that she goes through. It's incredible to watch. I mean,
I think her and Diego Luna just, you know, carry this film. Like I said, the other characters don't really have too much time to kind of develop past I guess, you know, just a name. It's just like grandma. It's like grandpa.
Well,
the friend.
even the Sienna Miller and Diego Luna, they're Adrian and Mateo. Like they don't have last names.
Yeah.
You know, like none of the characters have last names.
Yeah.
In the movie, which is interesting. But it's not really needed. You know.
Yeah.
Like it's a very intimate story of, you know, it's really just about these two people and their kid.
Yeah.
You know. So I don't know if it would have added anything, but I did feel that, I don't know, like the father-in-law, like he's definitely the most like background character.
Yeah.
It's like, I feel like he would have had a little, I don't know.
Yeah.
A little more maybe, but it wasn't so much that it ruined the movie for me or anything like that, you know?
Yeah, and I don't think, like I said, it could have just been those two on screen. I mean, it pretty much was, but it didn't really need anyone else to add to it. I mean, again, you know, I know it's their story, but I think they did lose sight of the daughter a little bit in the second half. You know, because the flashbacks do start with a hospital and like that kind of stuff, but then as it moves towards their relationship, we just really hear her crying a little bit more. But like I said, these are like very minor points. They're not criticisms. It's just, you know, to turn this from a 4 to a 5-star or from a, you know, an 8 out of 10 to a 10 out of 10. It's not.
Yeah.
And to say that, you know, they do have to carry it. They do a phenomenal job. Yeah.
I mean, they're both incredible. Diego Luna is also amazing. Of course, everybody knows him from Rogue One, I'm sure, and he's got his new Cassian show coming up. But Sienna Miller, I didn't, you know, I've seen some of the movies she's in, but I've never, you know, this is the first time I've ever been like, oh my God, she's awesome.
Yeah.
You know,
I don't think
and
that
then-
I've ever seen a carrier film like this before. I think that's the difference.
Yeah.
I've seen her play parts in films, but to be in every single scene and to convincingly sell this character, I don't know who else could have done as better.
Yeah. Just looking up a little bit of the behind the scenes stuff, it seemed like Tara Mealy had both of them in mind for the parts when she was coming up with the story. She apparently had pictures of them in her lookbook when she was like trying to get financing and stuff,
great.
which is funny.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that Sienna Miller played Tippi Hedren in an Alfred Hitchcock, well, not biopic, but a film about the making of birds, I guess, the birds. I saw that and I was like, what the heck? And then I sent you the trailer. You're like, oh yeah, I've seen it.
I think it was a BBC production years ago. I know that Toby Jones did a really good job at portraying the dark side of Hitchcock.
Yeah.
Anthony Hopkins again did a really great job as well, but The Birds was I feel a little bit more free,
more accurate.
Yeah, it was able to tell the story in a bit of a less Hollywood style. But yeah, she's great in that too. It just made me want to go back and rewatch it. But like you said, it is an actress that I don't think I've been paying enough attention to at this point.
Yeah.
But now I want to be sitting up. And Diego Luna, he just has that just young, carefree air about him.
Yeah.
You just, like I said, he's just the perfect casting for that character, because as soon as you see him, you're like, I know this character.
Yeah.
And sometimes that can be a negative, but I think for this, it works really, really well. But then again, in Rogue One, he's completely different. He's not this character. He's more regimented, It's quite funny because when we did our top 5 of the year a few episodes ago, I kind of knocked it off the list at the last minute. Not saying that it was terrible. It was really, really good, but just there was 5 others that I preferred. And that was Y2 Mama Tambien.
Which one?
Y2 Mama Tambien. I'm probably absolutely butchering that title.
Is he in that?
He is. So he's one of the teenage boys.
Okay.
And that is really good.
That is who directed that?
It's Alfonso Cuarón.
Oh, okay, cool.
But for me, it was the character he plays in that film could easily have been Mateo in this film. It could have been the same character through. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I feel like, obviously the actors did an incredible job and were perfect for the roles, but the costumes also, I feel like, did a lot for this movie, which is something I don't normally notice, especially for, a film where people are wearing modern clothes. It's not like they're doing set pieces or whatever.
Yeah.
But he, he just has that normal guy kind of thing. He's almost wearing the same thing in every scene. He just has jeans and this, work shirt on. And then her clothes are they're always bright and fun and I don't know, they just fit the characters so well.
Yeah.
So I think that contributed a lot to breathing life into those characters as well.
Yeah. And she wears a Nirvana shirt, which yep.
You're a big Nirvana fan.
Yeah, I can see why Mateo fell in love with her. She was wearing that T-shirt. So, but can she name a track, Brandon? That's what I want to know. I just need an end credit scene of her being okay, here's Bleach side A, and just listing them all, just so I can be cool, as long as you know them. But leading on from that, kind of the unsung heroes, the music. That was one of the first notes I wrote down, was how it wasn't intrusive. It was just it just added to the piece. There wasn't a point where it was da 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 or anything like that. It was
exactly. Yeah, that was kind of my thought about a lot of this film.
Yeah,
was that it was it was done so well. the editing, the cinematography, the way everything cuts together, the music, but it's not showy about it. Like it's not like there's nobody like there was nothing in there to try to be like, oh, look at this shot.
Yeah.
Oh, listen to this music. Oh, like everything was contributing to the narrative.
Exactly. And it wasn't too, I mean, especially with, big budget Hollywood films, they're like, you should be feeling this emotion right now.
Yeah.
And here it was like, we're going to let you make up your own mind. If you like, and that, if anything, that affected me more because I like the film wasn't telling me how to feel. I could let my emotions come out because, like I said before, when they find out that it's him that has died, I didn't feel like I was going to cry. I was like, this is sad. But in any other film, it would have been like a long, stretched out kind of, musical score. She would have been like walking around the freeway, like falling into things and, crying herself. But instead it was just like, we're going to see these people react like people.
Yeah. And rewatching it and knowing that he's passed and that like these reactions she's having is like due to trauma.
Yeah.
Like watching her run through the hospital when she thinks that she's pretending that it's her that died. Obviously like going back, it's like she's pretending that it's her that died. It's just like I started getting emotional in those scenes, rewatching it, knowing what's really happening. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's an intense movie. It is intense.
And I think that on the surface, it's just about grief. It's about dealing with losing a loved one and kind of, I guess, their last moments not being as great as you want them to be.
Yeah.
But it's also about dealing with, trauma and not trauma related to grief. A lot of the things that she sees in her memories, I know they're to do with, like, he died in the same accident, but it's things that happened to her. It's somebody trying to get in through the window to get her out, to save her.
Yeah.
Probably knowing that the last thing she said to her boyfriend was, like, I don't think I'm very happy anymore.
Yeah.
There's so much to it. And I'm really glad you watched it twice. I really wanted to know kind of how it is on a second viewing. Yeah. If it still has the same emotional punch or not, because I don't think I can bring myself to watch it again anytime soon. Not that it's terrible, but just it was a hard watch. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an intensely emotional experience. I mean, like I said, it's like going through a lifetime in an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And it's like you can't do that every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Looking, I did watch a couple of interviews with the director and the two lead actors, at Sundance, and then they did, some press afterwards and stuff. Tara, she talks a lot about, well, she mentioned in one interview that, even though I think she said this was her fourth feature, that it feels like kind of her first because she's, writing and directing and she's, it's like her baby.
Yeah.
And she's kind of been a director for hire, which I thought was interesting. And then also that they hired a lot of female crew to make this movie. Like it was mostly female crew, and she said that a lot of times men get hired for their potential, whereas women get hired for their like the work that the previous work that they've done. Like in terms of, film crews anyway.
Yeah.
And so she tried to hire women for their potential on this film. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy to me, man, that this, that this movie didn't do anything else. I mean, there is, so about a year ago, there was an article in Variety saying that Apple TV Plus is in final negotiations for a film titled Carrie and Me, which is a film adapted from the memoir that Carol Burnett wrote, or it's her memoir. I don't know if I guess she wrote it, but it's about her. Oh, wait, sorry. Hold on. Yeah, Carol Burnett's best-selling memoir about her daughter, Carrie Hamilton. Okay, so I don't know anything about her daughter.
No, you know that.
But when I first saw this, I thought it was a memoir about Carol Burnett, but
Yeah.
her name's not Carrie. So, or I guess Carrie and me. So I guess it's Carol and her daughter. Okay,
Carrie.
sorry.
Yeah.
I'm like just not putting this together.
I wouldn't have done it either.
Anyways,
Yeah, I wouldn't have done it.
but this article came out a year ago, but basically saying that Tara Mealy is supposed to write and direct the project.
Awesome.
And it's produced by Apple Studios and Tina Fey.
Awesome.
So hopefully that's happening. I mean, this came out a year ago, and I don't see any other articles about it. I assume that maybe they're in production.
Yeah.
And that's coming soon, hopefully, because that would be a huge win for Tara, obviously. And, this movie, I mean, I couldn't find, for Wander Darkly, I couldn't find anything about the budget or anything like that. I'm really curious what this was made for. It sounds like it was made for very little money. I mean, she, in one of the interviews, she was saying that scene where she, it's towards the end, and she sees the place where they had the wreck, and then she goes to talk to the homeless man who saved her, and she's putting together what happened. Apparently, they only had something like a minute and a half to shoot that.
Oh my God.
Because they couldn't shut down the street and stuff.
Yeah.
Because they just didn't have the money for it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it like, that's another thing. Like, for someone to have, it had to have been less than $5 million, I would imagine. Probably way less.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, to do something this incredible, to pull it off, and for like no money.
Yeah.
It's great. I love it.
And I love the characters that are presented, and like you said about the women behind the camera that she hired. It's such a progressive without me. Not that I think that was like intentional. I know you see a lot of films at the moment that are, they're just kind of, I hate to say it, but ticking boxes. It's like, I think about the new How I Met Your Father, the How I Met Your Mother spin-off.
Yeah,
and it's
like everybody's
hey,
trying to. They think that like being progressive is somehow like marketable or something.
Yeah.
They're not doing it because they actually believe in positive change.
Yeah,
they're doing it because it's like the trendy thing to do. Whereas like it feels like this is someone who is out there doing the work.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. These characters aren't defined by race, gender, situation, economic, whatever. I mean, the only thing I think that it comes into play is when Mateo is, when the kind of the girl is flirting with Mateo, and she speaks in Spanish for a second, and it's just, it just adds to the fact that Adriana is like alienated away from this. She feels on the outside of their relationship, and that's the only time that I feel like it ever comes into play. Yeah, it's not a point. And I know I watched something online because I wanted to, listen to her talk about this film, and she said, I grow up. Well, that she lives in LA. All of her friends are of different races. She's like, that's just what I'm around. This is like my life. Is that I'm not, just hanging out with white people all the time. And it's. We need more of this. Yeah. Like I don't want to say unintentional, but just characters that are not defined by race. Yeah. Is the best way to put it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Like, and I hope that like this film will find its audience and its life. And it kind of has to some degree, I'm sure. But, at least it's on Hulu. At least it's out there somewhere.
God bless Hulu.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, it seems like they have a lot of the good indie stuff. A lot of the stuff that came out of Sundance is on there. I mean, there is stuff on Netflix and Amazon Prime as well. But
yeah, Hulu seemed to have a deal with some. I think it might be with Sundance. I'm not sure, but they have a deal with some independent, especially American festival, so they can show the films on Hulu. That's one of I can remember reading that ages ago. I don't know if that's still going on, but I tend to find, the kind of the more well-known indie films, I guess is one way to put it, on Hulu. So
yeah, man.
Yeah, but I'm going to say, if you go and follow us on Instagram, you might get the chance to see the photo I sent Brandon of me sobbing uncontrollably at the end of this movie.
Yes, give us a follow at Film Church Radio, please.
I feel that I couldn't justify my emotions with words, so I had to send you that photo straight away and just be like, just heads up, I am very sad right now.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm glad we watched it though. It was
me too.
Man, it was good.
It helped me work through some of my problems, I think.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
I feel like, we're just in January, dude, and just this, I love this podcast so much. Like, just to, we're just at the end of January. Like, we just started. Yeah. And I just feel so rich with films. Mm-hmm. Already. I'm like, I'm like, oh, I already got my list of 5 films for the end of the year.
Yeah, I know. It's so great.
Yeah, man. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure, dude.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if there was anything else to talk about. Like,
I'm really glad that Vanessa Bayer was in it. I love Vanessa Bayer. She was the friend.
She was like her friend. Yeah. She's in this show, I Think You Should Leave, on Netflix.
Yeah, and she's a massive part of SNL. I always enjoyed her on SNL. She was always super reliable. So whenever I saw Vanessa Bayer, I was like, cool, casting's good. Yeah. This is a good person. Not that she had a lot of lines, but it's just good seeing her on screen.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there wasn't a ton of comedy in this movie, obviously, but there was one part where I laughed, and it was that same scene you were talking about with Shay, where she speaks in Spanish, and then when she's leaving, she puts her arms on Mateo, and she's like, "I love you."
Yeah.
And it's just like that kind of taps back into like remembering, like the memory part, because obviously that's probably not something that she really said when she was there, but she's just projecting like, oh, she's just like totally in love with my boyfriend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's the only part I can remember actually laughing.
Yeah, it's not full of laughs, I don't think.
No. But that's not the point either.
I do want to say that the last thing that I want to say is that the scene where they're in the water and like, there's just so much to it that once I kind of start thinking about it, it kind of starts to make a lot more sense. Like, they're in the water, and he's like, I was going to propose to you right here. And she was like, why didn't you? And then she starts to see the oil from the car in the water, and she like feels like she's on it. And it just, like, now, looking back on it, I'm just like, it's like, not obviously, but it seems like that was her coming closer to the realization that he's died. Coming closer to that moment of like, I did love you and now you're gone. But she was like pushing it away and rejecting it.
Yeah.
And I feel like that happens so much. But that was just so beautifully done. Just that whole like scene on the boat and then in the water. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There was so much, speaking of watching it again, for a second time.
Yeah.
Because you're so blown away by the ending of this film, there's a lot that you forget immediately because you can't stop thinking about the end of the movie and what it means. Mm-hmm. And, rewatching it, there was just so much that was like, oh, yeah, I forgot about this scene. This was beautiful. Oh, I forgot about this scene. This was beautiful. I forgot about the Night of the Living Dead scene, like, completely until I rewatched it. Like, so, yeah, there's a lot there that can be enjoyed and gone through and continued to be gone through. But I can't wait to see what all of these people who were involved in this film do next. I cannot wait.
And I think to say that it was her first time, Terra Mille, like writing and directing, it is such a full vision.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited to see what she does next, for sure.
Yeah.
And, I followed her on Twitter. So hopefully there'll be some announcements soon and something we can get excited about. But maybe this is our first champion filmmaker, Brandon, for the pod.
Yeah, man. Go Tara. Go Tara.
Planting that flag early.
Yes. I think that might be it.
Yeah, dude.
I think we came to the end of the show, folks.
That's all the notes I've got. A little bit less destroyed than I was when I watched the film, coming to the end of the show.
Yeah.
I feel like it's therapy. I'm getting it out.
Yeah, exactly. Well, everybody, again, you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, at Film Church Radio. You can follow us individually on Letterboxd. Mine is at Selmanscope, and Lewis is at Walker Lewis 3007. There you can keep up with what we've been watching, because we log our films, and you can see what we rate things, what we're watching next, what's on our watch list. You can recommend stuff to us. And then obviously listen to all of our back episodes if you haven't had a chance to yet. If you got any films that you want us to see, just send it to our social media channels. If you got any messages for us, comments, anything like that. And thanks for listening, everybody.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
All right, dude.
Do you want me to tell you what we're going to watch next week?
Yes, I do.
I'm just leaving you in suspense.
Yeah, I was like, I was ready for you to do the closing quote, and then I've totally forgot about the next week. I don't even care. This is the end of this. Yeah. This is the last episode.
I'm just Mateo to you now.
Yes.
You've just accepted that I'm not going to be here next week.
Exactly.
You're going to go and spread my pod ashes.
Yep.
Okay.
I was just getting ahead of myself. What are we watching, dude?
So, there's been a few reasons why I picked this film. So, the first is that it's a film that I absolutely love. And I had a look and I know that it's on your to-watch list.
Okay.
And I've been wanting to have a reason to revisit it. And I feel like this person at the moment is having a bit of a renaissance. There's 2 new books coming out about him. One of which I got the other day, and that a lot of people are talking about just how incredible he was. So the film that we are going to be watching for next week, Brandon, is 1924's Sherlock Jr., directed and starring Buster Keaton, one of my cinematic heroes, a film I've seen a few times but not for a while. And I mean, I don't want to say too much, but
don't say too much. I mean, I've seen oh my gosh, what did I watch this last summer? The one with the train.
Oh, yeah. The General.
The General. I watched that this last summer, I think it was.
Yeah.
And I took this comedy film course, and I can't remember why now, but Sherlock Jr. seemed like such a good film. Mm-hmm. That I needed to watch. So I put it on my list, and it's just been sitting on my list. Yeah. It's weird when you put things on your list, because sometimes I can't remember why I put them there. I mean, I do remember thinking that when I read about this movie that it sounded really good, but now I've forgotten everything that I read, so that's probably a good thing.
Yeah. And it's super short. It's like 45 minutes long. So,
oh, wow.
But it's going to be good. And I'm so excited to revisit it because, last week I kind of asked you before we started, I was like, does it have to be films that we both haven't seen? You were like, I don't think so.
Yeah.
And I was like, thank God, because I've been wanting to rewatch this film and I've wanted you to watch it for so long.
Sweet.
So I'm glad that we're doing it.
I'm looking forward to it, man. That sounds great.
Awesome. And silent cinema. I love silent cinema.
Yeah. Our first silent film of the show.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. I wasn't going to start off with like Metropolis that's like 3 hours and 50 minutes long.
Right.
I'm going to break you into that slowly. We'll get there.
Break it down scene by scene. It's going to be a 9-hour episode.
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, I'm not going to go and watch that right now, but I probably am going to go and watch Night of the Living Dead.
Zombies. You hate zombies.
They're my people now. I feel really connected to them, actually. They're very misunderstood.
All right. Well, Stay alive and come back next week.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.